Hi, everybody. My name is Shannon Burge. I am one of the CDBG specialists. Today, we also have Crystal White, who is also another one of the CDBG specialists, along with Jeannie and Tanner. Also on our meeting today is Susan Holt, our program manager. And today, we're going to be doing the second session of the 2024 NOFA for the CDBG program. So under this NOFA, the funding that is available is approximately $34 million in funding through the Federal Small Cities Community Development Block Grant Program for the 2024 funding year. So just some quick housekeeping items. The goal of this workshop is to go over the information that is not already in the existing training materials or in the NOFA materials. If a question is answered in one of our online training aids or is mentioned in the NOFA or any of those appendices, we will be directing you to those resources. And just as the process, staff will be recording any questions that we can't answer here today, and we'll be regularly updating an FAQ that we will get to you as soon as we can regarding any program questions and updates to the application. And just as a reminder to how to ask a question, please click on the Q&A chat bubble to submit a question to the team. You may ask questions anonymously, but if you want your name, organization, or region associated with your question, you'll need to type it in the Your Name box. The team will read questions out loud through the presentation. Well, it'll be more towards the end, and we'll provide answers if possible. And all questions will be saved and recorded as part of the public record. So what is new in this NOFA? Well, there's a lot. So what is new in this NOFA? There is a comprehensive list of eligible activities under this NOFA. It's a combination list of matrix codes and national objectives, so please make sure that you check this out. We have also provided updates to the competitive and the over-the-counter application process. We have added a housing and economic development program. We've also updated the application process, funding limits, and total number of applications per jurisdiction. We have also added that applicants must be able to demonstrate compliance with Build America, Buy America, or BABA, as applicable to their application. The 50% rule does apply for any planning or public service grant, regardless of the matrix code. And we've also made updates to documentation for site control for all CDBG funded programs. Additionally, there is a requirement for membership in the local continuum of care, or the COC, for homelessness assistance activities, which include matrix codes 03C or 03T. There may be some we might have missed. We also added permitting requirements for competitive projects. We also added that some information about the authorized signatory for cities. That must be the mayor or mayor pro tempore, unless there is an ordinance or municipal code designating another position. We've also added the requirements to completing the law and authority topic worksheets that have to be included with all environmental review records, and all OTC applications must demonstrate readiness. So here is our tentative timeline that we have. As you all know, the NOFA did release on August 30th of 2024. The application, it will be opening October 29th of 2024 at 9 a.m. We are allowing a 60-day review period. The application deadline for competitive, which we really want to make sure that we demonstrate, is December 30th of 2024 at 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And OTC also falls under that same thing, unless funds are exhausted, whichever comes first. Contract execution for both competitive and OTC will start around May of 2025, with OTC being on a rolling basis starting in May of 2025. And just as a reminder, for those of you who may have not come in for 2023, our expenditure deadline has changed. It's going to be 2 years and 9 months from the contract execution. The first thing that we are going to go through is program requirements. So to start off, we're going to go through the application types. Competitive still includes planning and public service. And for the over-the-counter, we have the over-the-counter projects, as well as the over-the-counter programs, which includes our new housing program and economic development program. For our application limits, the maximum number of applications is 3, and listed below are the only acceptable application combinations. So it can be an OTC project, an OTC program, whether it's the housing or economic development, and a competitive, or it can be an OTC project plus 2 competitive applications, or you can do an OTC program and 2 competitive, or you can do 2 competitive, which again can either be 2 public service or 2 planning, or 1 public service and 1 planning. But if it's not on this list, it is not going to work. Additionally, for funding limits, it is 3.6 million per jurisdiction for all activities. Competitive is limited to not to exceed 300,000. OTC projects cannot exceed 3.3 million, and the OTC programs cannot exceed 1.5 million. Just as a reminder regarding our program income, as well as the Colonius set aside, these two do not count against the maximum award limit. So you can apply for those grant funds, and you can also put your PI with it. The key is to make sure that you have your PI reporting in, so that way we know what you have. Applicants may request up to 7% of total funding for general admin costs, plus 17% of annual PI receipts. And again, we can't calculate that 17% without your PI reporting. Just as some information, we do have a GA calculator that is posted that will give you the accurate amount that you can claim for GA, because that GA calculation is based off the total activity cost, which is activity and activity delivery times 7%. So for some application requirements, an eligible applicant must be a non-entitlement jurisdiction and demonstrate housing element compliance. In regards to the housing element, at a minimum, a draft or adopted housing element must be submitted prior to the application submission. Just something else that we do want to add to this, though, is, if your draft has been submitted, please make sure that you complete that all the way, because if you do not complete that process timely and not have your housing element in compliance, you'll be ineligible for funding. Additionally, we do require a signed form regarding growth control limitations, which is also basically our statement of assurances form that is available. Additional application requirements is submitting a complete application, which includes a main application and a sub-application per matrix code. And finally, the application must be for an eligible activity and national objective code combination. As I mentioned previously, we do have a list that's available of the matrix code and national objectives that are going to be accepted under this NOFA. I encourage every single one of you to check out to make sure that anything that you have planned will match what you're trying to do. Some additional application requirements. Applicants are required to attend or watch these recorded video of these workshop sessions. Part of the application will require applicants to certify participating in this application training, as well as watching those other ones. So for instance, some of the training topics that we have is on resolution, what is required and why, public participation, completing the correct level of environmental review, pulling a debarment check, selecting the correct national objective and matrix code, writing a narrative and milestones, single audit, addressing racial equity in your CDBG funded projects and programs, completing the 2024 NOFA application and budget that will be coming next week. Please make sure that you're signed up, as well as this webinar, which goes over the 2024 NOFA review. For eligible activities, so under this NOFA, funds are provided as grants to non-entitlement jurisdictions for project applications for eligible CDBG activities. All CDBG funded activities must meet the following national objective: being able to benefit LMI persons. Applicants are expected to plan activities that will reduce disparities and increase racial and socioeconomic equity in their communities. Just as a reminder, federal and state law requires CDBG costs to be eligible, necessary, reasonable, not to be used to supplement local and state resources, and be guarded against fraud. So for eligible activities, we kind of wanted to make sure that we gave a brief understanding of what these new OTC programs are. So for this first one, this is the OTC program for economic development. These are the acceptable program combinations. It includes 18A, which is the economic development financial assistance for for-profit businesses, 18B being the economic development technical assistance, and 18C, which is for microenterprise assistance. And here's the one for the OTC program for housing. These are the acceptable program combinations. And again, it can be a combination of these up to the 1.5 million for each of these. And just as a special note for code enforcement, which we'll go into for the next couple of slides, code enforcement's available with a housing program this go around. So for code enforcement under this NOFA, code enforcement is only going to be made available under a housing program. If there is not an existing housing rehab program, the housing program application with code enforcement must include one of the housing rehab matrix codes on the last slide. The focus of code enforcement will be on health and safety issues in buildings and structures. To gain compliance with HUD's intent for this type of program, applicants with a code enforcement must demonstrate a ratio of $1 of code enforcement to $2.50 of housing rehab. Now, to clarify on that ratio, for every dollar of code enforcement funds requested, applicants must have $2.50 in demonstrated or applied for funds for a housing rehab program. Demonstrated refers to housing rehab programs already in existence within the applicant's jurisdiction, or applied for funds referring to a housing rehab program through this application. So for LMI, these are the national objective ones that we have: LMA, LMC, LMCMC, LMH, and LMJ. I'm sure many of you know what these are, so I'm not going to go and start digging into all these. For milestones, we did change this NOFA. So applicants must include at least 5 milestones per activity application. All milestones will be defined and implemented through the standard agreement. Some really important changes. The first and last milestone will be pre-populated and cannot be edited by applicants. Failure to meet that first milestone is a material breach of the standard agreement and will result in a for-cause termination of the agreement. This slide here is just some examples of the milestones that applicants can put into their applications. These can also be found in the NOFA.
Thank you, Shannon. I'm Crystal White, and I'll complete the webinar. We'll begin with the application threshold and initial requirements. Thank you, Tanner. Attention, please. The department strongly recommends a careful review of the application instructions, 2024 NOFA, and all appendices prior to beginning the application. Failure to meet threshold will result in immediate disqualification. Next slide. The threshold and initial requirements are, as noted, an eligible applicant as defined in previous slides. You must have single audit documentation, site control, statement of insurances, public participation, a resolution, a taxpayer identification number, e-civis budget templates, a sources and uses chart, also known as the duplication of benefits, a SAM.gov department checks for the jurisdiction as well as any third-party contracts. Your state objectives have to be met through affirmatively furthering fair housing and disaster resiliency response. You must have a NEPA for the activity and journal administration, and you must demonstrate a readiness criteria documentation. Next slide. Now, the federal program requirements. You must comply with and have documentation of meeting federal cross-cutting requirements, such as lead-based paint requirements, not using debarred, ineligible, or suspended contractors or subrecipients, the uniform administrative requirements and cost principles, conflict of interest prohibitions, compliance with the Architectural Barriers Act and the ADA, compliance with eligibility restrictions for certain resident aliens, federal reporting requirements, grant and subrecipient monitoring requirements, as well as Build America, Buy America Act requirements known as BABA. Next slide, please. Specifically regarding Build America, Buy America, this was established for as a federal financial assistance obligated for infrastructure projects. It requires all iron, steel, manufactured products, and construction materials are produced in the United States. HUD requires compliance with the Buy America preference for funds obligated on or after November 14th, 2022. It's currently waived for projects whose total cost is less than $250,000 and for a de minimis portion of all projects. Next slide. Warning, false, fictitious, or fraudulent claims. Warning, any person who knowingly makes a false claim or statement to HUD or the department may be subject to civil or criminal penalties under 18 USC and 18 USC 3729. Next slide, please. The application's activity and submission requirements. The application certification and verification process. The applicant must certify that the application is true and correct. The jurisdiction must be the applicant, and circumventing the application invalidates the submission. You must have a timely submission. Give plenty of time for submitting prior to the cutoff date and at least several hours prior to the cutoff time. Submission deadline is until funds are exhausted or 60 days after the application open date at 3 p.m. The submission deadline will not be extended. Please report technical issues, including any error screenshots, immediately to CDBG at hcd.ca.gov. Please remember that CDBG is gap or but-for funding. CDBG provides stopgap funding for crucial infrastructure, public safety, housing, and social service projects. CDBG must be but-for funding for every activity and may not be used to supplant local or state resources or used to replace funds that have been budgeted and or expended from another funding source for the same activity. Next slide. Additionally, you must be in good standing. The applicant and any co-applicant must be in good standing with HCD, current on all loan and or grant obligations, and have a satisfactory past performance history in all their prior dealings with the department. Racial equity. Ensure racial equity in access to programs, projects, and activities funded with CDBG resources. Applicants must commit to analyzing disproportionality in access to housing, access to services, quality of service provision, and desired outcomes in programs and projects, and affirmatively further equitable access, quality of service provision, and outcomes for protected classes, including but not limited to Black, Native, and Indigenous, Latino, Latina, Latinx, Asian, Pacific Islanders, and other people of color who have been historically marginalized and are disproportionately impacted by housing segregation, poverty, and homelessness. Next slide, please. Additionally, Unhoused, any homeless assistance, you must be a member of the local continuum of care. Readiness. Applications must demonstrate readiness to be considered for funding. Scoring. Qualifying competitive applications will be scored according to criteria in Appendix F. Applications requiring the least number of corrections will score higher. Qualifying competitive applications will be ranked based upon highest score. Applicants will be notified and the final award list posted to the CDBG webpage. Next slide. Submission requirements. You're going to need to certify attendance of workshops. Follow the instructions in the NOFA, the online application, and the CDBG program guidelines. Submit a correct and complete application. I'll refer to the permitted application combinations that were discussed in a previous slide and is detailed in the NOFA. Please note the official submission date time of an application is the time that both a main and sub application is submitted, whichever is later. Meaning if you submit a sub application on November 1st, but do not submit the main until November 14th, your submission date is November 14th. Every subsequent sub application will have a submission date time of the respective sub application. Next slide. The application review, readiness, and submission. Applications must demonstrate readiness to be considered for funding. To be considered ready, a program will need to provide the following at application submission: draft or final program guidelines, third-party contractor either secured, or a draft RFP or RFQ is to be released within 60 days of standard agreement execution. Housing and economic development programs and projects must have a marketing plan or strategy. Next slide. The application review for submission. Submitted applications must be complete to be reviewed. A complete application consists of one main application plus one sub application per matrix code. A complete application consists of one main application plus one sub application per matrix code. Over-the-counter programs with multiple activity types, multiple matrix codes, will be considered as a single application. If awarded, it will be funded under a single standard agreement. Please participate in the live application and budget webinar on Tuesday, September 10th, 2024 at 2 p.m. for more information on the application and budget components of the CDBG NOFA 2024 NOFA. We'd also like to extend an invitation to the next office hours on September 18th. During the regular scheduled office hours, we will conduct an open forum where we will take all questions from applicants on the 2024 NOFA. Next slide, please. The application review submission. All applications submitted by the application deadline, competitive applications, or until funds are exhausted, the OTC applications, that pass the threshold evaluation phase will be reviewed for activity eligibility. Activities that do not meet program eligibility requirements will be disqualified for funding. The competitive review. All applications will be reviewed for minimum threshold requirements. If minimum threshold requirements are met, applications will be scored as outlined in CDBG scoring matrix Appendix F. The OTC review. Applications will be reviewed in order received for minimum threshold requirements. If minimum threshold requirements are met, funds may be allocated for an award. Once all funds are allocated and it has been announced that all funds have been exhausted, additional OTC applications may not be reviewed. Next slide. The awards announcement and grant implementation, appeals, standard agreements, and federal requirements. Next slide. Awards and implementation. Award announcements will occur no later than May 2025. CDBG staff will not be able to discuss applications or the status of applications. Appeals must be made in writing. Appeals must be received by HCD no later than 5 days from the date applicant is notified that their application has failed to move forward. Criteria for competitive applications and OTC appeals are outlined in the NOFA. Late appeals will not be reviewed. Standard agreements. A condition of award will be that a standard agreement must be executed by the awardee within 30 days, contracting period, of the awardee's receipt of the standard agreement. We have several resources available to you that provide the details of the information provided in these webinars. Resources are the CDBG website and eCivis, the CDBG Grants Management Manual website, the 2024 CDBG NOFA, the website and eCivis, and the CDBG Grants Management Manual. The link to the website is provided in this webinar at this link, which will be made available to you. Next slide, please. We'd like to thank you all for participating in our webinar and invite you to put any of your questions in the Q&A, and we will begin answering them, the ones that we can answer. For those that we're unable to answer, we will identify a method and to get them responded to and back to everyone. Thank you. Okay, Brandy, for a program offering micro enterprise assistance and micro enterprise technical assistance, would the jurisdiction submit 2 separate sub-applications or 1 sub-application? And Jeannie wanted to answer that.
Hi, Brandy. Thank you for your question. For a micro enterprise assistance and micro enterprise technical assistance, you will be submitting 1 main application as well as 2 separate sub-applications. Thank you.
Sandra, in the past, we used an HCD resolution template to adopt program guidelines. Is this still required, or can we adopt program guidelines using our standard county resolution? Jeannie, you're going to answer for us.
I can take this one as well, Sandra. Thank you. CDBG does not have requirements on how a jurisdiction adopts program guidelines. We leave that up to each jurisdiction and their process. Thank you.
Brandy would like to know, when will the slides be available?
I can take that as well, Crystal. Thank you. Slides, unfortunately, we do not have an ETA for the slides and the webinar recording. We do need to go through remediation, but we will get these up as soon as possible on our website, on our CDBG website. Thank you.
Crystal, before you move on, I wanted to go back to Brandy's first question about the micro TA and funding.
Okay.
Just to give a point of clarification, so the 18C, which is the matrix code that you would use for micro enterprise, includes the funding and the technical assistance. So in that scenario that you mentioned, recommend 18C for that one. Okay. Just wanted to bring that point of clarification. Hopefully that helps.
Thank you, Susan.
Sure.
Sandra, Central Sabine, if no PI is submitted to the application, can the 17% of PI admin be added to the grant via a budget resolution? Shannon?
Hi, Sandra. Thank you for your question. So I know we can schedule a meeting with TWE if we need to, but essentially what we want to do here is make sure that at the time of application that the resolution does have PI mentioned. That way we can make sure we put it as PI future receipts. So then we can just do a budget revision instead. But again, I have a feeling that this is going to be kind of one of those one-off separate conversations outside of it. But in order to do a budget revision, we got to make sure that we capture the PI at the time of application. and have a resolution. If anybody else on our team wants to chime in, I would encourage it.
Thank you, Sharon.
Thanks, Crystal.
Christine Vitarelli, we have both a housing rehab program and an ADU PHLA program to fund the construction of ADUs to increase housing supply. Can we consider both programs when conducting the dollar ratio of funding to the dollar to dollar ratio of funding to requested for code enforcement when evaluating the ratio percentage requirement?
Yeah, I can take this one. Thank you, Christine, for your question. So I'll give a little bit of clarification. It does not have to be CDBG funding in order to have that ratio. So your housing that you have going doesn't have to be through CDBG. We'll just need substantiation of that. Now, as far as the ADU question being incorporated into this, please send this question to the unit inbox at the CDBG at hcd.ca.gov, as we are working on getting a little more comprehensive clarification on how ADUs should be handled. So hopefully that helps with the beginning of it, but the ADU portion of it, we want to give you a good comprehensive correct answer through the unit inbox. So please send it there. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Tanner, can you go to slide 35? Brenda is asking that we return to slide 35, and it's the application review readiness slide. Did we get that out? Okay, we'll get that back. We'll get that to you, Brandy. Louise, where will the Q&A be posted, and how often do you expect to post updates?
Hey, Louise, thank you for your question. So we are basically going to be doing the Q&A based off the live NOFA webinars. So both Tuesday and today, we're going to consolidate and kind of figure that out. We're still working out the kinks of where we're going to post it, but of course we will let you guys know as soon as we have it kind of ironed out.
Thank you, Shannon.
Thank you.
Anonymous attendee, can you please expound on who or what type of entities is or are eligible to apply? Jeannie, you can answer that for us?
Hi, I can take this and the next question. Are nonprofit groups eligible for funding?
Great.
The state CDBG program partners with rural cities and county entitlement jurisdictions. We do not provide direct assistance to individuals, organizations, or entities. Thank you.
Thank you. Brandy, for endpoint 4 of the NOFA, the grantee has two sub-recipients who have over 20 years experience in implementing CDBG microenterprise assistance, microenterprise technical assistance, and business assistance. Neither subrecipient is an SBDC. Are the subrecipients eligible to carry out these functions? And what is needed to be submitted beyond the subrecipient agreements? In point 4, the applicant commits to partnering with the Small Business Development Centers or a similar organization that has direct experience in CDBG ED program design, implementation, and commercial underwriting. This commitment will be a resolution, memorandum of understanding, or a similar formal statement and will be required at application. Brandy, thank you for your question. Oh, Susan.
Yes. Oh, no, you're fine. Thank you, Brandy, for that. I would recommend that you send this question to the unit inbox so we can get some more information if needed and give you a good, solid answer.
Thank you, Susan. Brandy also would like to know, to clarify, microenterprise assistance and microenterprise technical assistance, both 18C, but two sub-applications.
Hi, Brandy. Hi, Brandy. So just to clarify, because it's going to be under 18C, it's just one matrix code. So it's that's why Susan wanted to clarify it. It'll just be one main application and then one sub application with the 18C matrix code.
Right. And not just to piggyback off of that, for just to make sure we're clear here, that's just for microenterprise. If it's a different type, then it would be either 18A or 18B, depending. 18A is money, 18B is technical assistance, but with micro enterprise specific, it's 18C and just one application. Shannon's correct. Thank you.
Okay, Nicole, does a housing rehab program require the code enforcement program component? Jeannie?
I can take this. Thank you, Nicole. You do not need to apply for code enforcement if you want to do housing rehab only. Thank you.
Anonymous attendee. For jurisdictions working on HE, housing element compliance, and who have at least submitted a draft to HCD and are in active engagement with HCD working toward compliance, if an OTC CDBG app is submitted and awarded, what happens if the HE is not yet in compliance at the time of signing the standard agreement? Will the jurisdiction lose their chance to secure that award, or will the standard agreement be on hold and signed once the HE receives its cert of compliance? Susan?
Sure, I can take that one. Thank you for that question. We get a lot of housing element questions. So you're on the right track. Housing element draft must be submitted in order to apply. And the way it kind of works is once you're compliant with your housing element, it's adopted, and our division has let us know that we're good to go, then we would enter into a standard agreement. So yes, your standard agreement would be on hold until the housing element is in compliance. And just to be clear, please continue. Don't just submit your draft and then just, wipe your hands for a minute. It is required timely working with our department to get that full adoption done. And then, there's some nuances there, and we work with that department very closely to make sure we get you a standard agreement as quickly as possible. But it is required that you work with them timely to get that adoption in. But just to be able to apply, we need at least at minimum a draft submitted, and that language is in the NOFA if you want to check that out for further clarification.
Thank you, Susan. Brandy would like to know, how long should we wait for CDBG inbox to answer before we follow up?
Okay, so I'll take this one too. The answer is no answer. Sorry, Brandy. We're still working out those kinks. We want to make sure we get them out to you as quickly as possible. So we are going to host at the next office hours on the 18th will be an open forum. We hope to answer some there. We're looking into the option of possibly an FAQ that we can give out that if we see some of the same questions coming through. So I would at minimum wait until the open forum on the 18th before following up. And end that open forum. If you haven't received the answer, then you can certainly ask it there as well.
Thank you, Susan. Brandy would like to know, for the program guidelines, SISCA-U will be applying for a food assistance program. Will this require guidelines approved by the Board of Supervisors? Shannon, you got this?
Yeah. Hi, Brandy. So it kind of just depends, because from my understanding, depending on how you have it set up with your Board of Supervisors, if there's guideline changes, let's say you have a housing rehab or, any sort of public service program, it may need to be approved by your Board of Supervisors, but there really is no set answer. If you have those, like a housing rehab program, for instance, already, like a housing rehab, and you have guidelines and you've had to take it to the board, I would probably follow the same protocol. Better play it safe, unless anybody else has anything else they want to add.
Thank you, Shannon. Elaine, I'm sorry, I'm new to this. I didn't quite understand the distinction made regarding entities. Please clarify. Thanks. Susan?
Sure. Thanks, Elaine. Appreciate that you're new to this, and we really want to make sure we give you good assistance on what all of this means. So when we refer to entities, we're really referring to, nonprofits, local government, city, or, we work with this. CDBG goes directly working with cities and counties in general. And other entities, whether they are government entities, nonprofit entities, any other kind of organization, there are some instances where they can work through the city or county in what they're looking for funding, but we just don't work directly with those other entities. So that's what we meant by entities. It's really any other organizational stakeholders that might be interested in benefiting from CDBG funds. CDBG works directly with cities and counties in general, but if you have a specific situation, a specific entity that you need clarification on, feel free to send that question to the unit inbox and we will get you a more comprehensive answer specific to what entity you might be inquiring about.
Can I add to that, Susan? Specifically, non-entitlement jurisdiction, cities and counties, if they
Thank
receive
you.
money, if they receive money directly from HUD, then they're in the HUD's jurisdiction for. So it's for the small rural type of cities and counties that do not receive direct funding from HUD.
That's very good point, Crystal. Thank you for that. So since you're new, Elaine, I will tell you what the difference is between entitlement is there are some jurisdictions, cities and counties that are large that go directly to HUD, as Crystal said, for their funding. And there's some smaller ones that partner with larger ones and go directly to HUD and opt in, that sort of thing. So if you look at our NOFA has the specific written language of who is qualified. So I direct you there. And it's also on our CDBG page of the websites, right? Slammed on the first page that says who qualifies. And that might give you a little more clarity. So this will be one of those circumstances where we'll direct you there. But if you have an entity that you're a specific entity that you're questioning about, you can send it to the unit email too. Thank you for that clarification, Crystal. I should have mentioned that.
Thank you, Ms. Susan. Okay, anonymous attendee. Do we have any grants similar to house key for tenants? I'm not familiar. I don't think anyone online is right here is, unless there's someone from the CD program familiar with the house key or home key program, if that's what you're referring to. But we are going to have to get additional information from you on that. When you say house key, are you referring to the home key program? If you could put in some clarifying information, then we would be able to kind of hone in and get you a specific response. But what we offer are the CDBG grant funds. That's what we have available. Okay, Brandy. Thank you for answering all my questions and for fixing Jeannie's microphone. She's loud and clear today.
Yes, and I want to say shout out to Brandy. Thank you for letting us
me
know
too.
that Jeannie's very important on this team. We want to make sure everyone can hear her
Well,
concrete answers.
Thank you for asking the your questions, because they help others who may not who may have some similar questions. So thank you, Brandy. Elaine, Elaine, specifically, I'm talking about nonprofits. Gotcha. That was referring to the entities.
Right. Yes, and nonprofits are not an entity that CDBG works directly with. However, sometimes there are some instances where you may go through your city or county. So I would reach out to your city or county and see if you can, piggyback on them, come in that way potentially, depending on what you're looking to do.
Okay. That was the last question. I'll wait another couple of minutes to see if anyone has any other questions for us. I would like to invite you again to the open forum that will be held on September 18th during the regular scheduled office hours. We'd like to invite you to that webinar.
Yeah, while we're waiting to see if there's more questions, I did want to visit, there was a question in the chat from Steve Adams that I was hoping that he would put into our Q&A so we could answer, but the question was about, the fact that there's 90 days to go out to bid once you get into your standard agreement, and what to do if that happens during an off season, an off construction season. We do run into that a lot. We understand that. So should your entity, now I'm on entities, should your jurisdiction be awarded, we can work with you to execute your standard agreement at a time that is advantageous for you to be able to go out to bid, so that we would still meet that requirement, but be able to, not have a standard agreement where you're just sitting and waiting for 6 months until your construction season opens, because we understand that that's difficult to get bidders for. So I just wanted to throw that out there for you, Steve. Appreciate your question in the chat, but apologies it didn't get over to the Q&A. Still wanted to get that for you.
You're welcome, Steve. Steve says thank you. Well, if there are no more questions, again, thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedules to participate in this webinar. We will see you on September 10th at 2 p.m. at the application and budget webinar that Jeannie will be conducting. And until then, take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.